Welcome gamers, this is Gold Leader and I'm back with another how to play video. This time we are going to be teaching everyone how to play Star Wars, the trading card game, otherwise known as Star Wars TCG, on Lackey. If this is your first time watching the video, we want to welcome you. We also do want to remind you that this is part 2 in a series of videos. The first video you would actually probably want to watch so that you can get Lackey downloaded to your computer and the Star Wars trading card game plugin installed within Lackey. There's a link below in the comments for our previous video. I would watch that first and then come back and watch the remainder of this video. Also, if this is if you're watching this video, we would really appreciate any likes, follows, and subscribes on Twitch and YouTube. It really will help us broaden the amount of content, and it will also help users find our content easier. There'll be links for those down in the comments as well. With that being said, I want to welcome Patrona. She's going to be joining us and helping me with this tutorial video.
Hello, everybody.
We are going to go over to Lackey and we are going to get you going through basically a pretty in-depth coverage on how to use the program. When you go over to Lackey, this is what the program will look like as soon as you open it up after you've watched our previous video. A couple things about Lackey. There are some people who have told me that they feel like Lackey is a little bit, how would you say, not intuitive? And I can understand that concept, but I think it's just a misunderstanding. Once you know what Lackey is trying to do and where the buttons are to do those things, Lackey actually becomes very intuitive. So Lackey is essentially an online platform for playing card games, and it really excels specifically for playing card games. Now, I know there's things out there like Tabletop Simulator. The Tabletop Simulator is very good. I think it really excels at playing board games. And there actually is an option to play Star Wars TCG on Tabletop Simulator, and we can put a link to how to get those options as well in the comments below, so you can check that out. And we'll probably do another video on how to play Star Wars TCG on TTS another time. But for this, we're going to go through Lackey, and the first thing we're going to do is, if you look on the left hand side of the screen, you'll see the Star Wars trading card game back of a card, and then just below it you'll see two avatars. One says set your name. That's because I haven't set any of the preferences yet. And below is the test dummy. The tab that's highlighted at the top says game offline. That's because we're actually not connected to a game anywhere. And this is just the default screen that you go to anytime you load up Lackey. But before we can go online, we actually have to set our preferences. So if we head over to the Preferences tab, you'll see the player name. You just have to select yours. I'm going to choose Gold Leader. You can change your color. The default is black. I'm going to change mine to orange. And then you can actually select an avatar. If you go to the IDC webpage where you download Lackey and the plugin, there's actually an additional download, which is an avatar pack of a bunch of Star Wars avatars. If you and your opponent both have these avatars downloaded, you can choose from any of these, and it just enhances your play experience. So I'm going to choose, I think I'm going to choose some clones. I like this clone avatar. Then I'm going to hit Save Player Profile. Now that my profile is saved, I can actually join the server. So if we head over to the server tab, connect to the matching game servers. Alright, we're now connected. So the box on the left here shows you all the players. It shows you what plugin those players are playing. The box on the right shows you all the games that people have loaded. So Patronus has actually loaded a game for us. And I'm going to, I can join that game if I wanted, but I'll also show you how to host your own game first. So we're going to host a game. Gold Leader's game. All I have to do is hit host game. There's a couple other things you could do in here, like if you wanted to set a password so only the person you want could join, you could do that. So I could type like 66 and someone would have to type 66 to join my game. I'm not going to set a password, I'm just going to hit host game. When I host a game, it'll take me to the game screen. You'll now see that blue tab doesn't say game offline, it says game host 1 because I'm the host of the game. You'll see my avatar now loaded here with my orange name that I chose. And then you'll see an empty chair. And when someone sees my game and joins my game, that chair will fill up. So what I want to do though is I want to connect with Patronus. So I'm actually going to X out of this game and I'm going to join her game so we can get her involved. Patronus, join selected game. And now I'm in a game with Patronus. So the first thing that you do when you get into a game with a player is you have to load up a deck. In order to load up a deck, we're going to have to leave the game screen and go to the deck editor tab. Left click on that tab. This is your deck editor. This is what you're going to use to look through the different decks you have, build any decks, create new ones, and the first functions that you're going to use are right here. So these are your deck functions. These control the different decks that you're going to be using. The first one we want usually is Browse. Click Browse. This will show you all the different decks that you have saved in Lackey. So I'm going to grab a Dark Side deck and let's do a Maul deck because that's fun. Choose. And when you select a deck, you actually can see the contents of the deck in this little white preview box here. Then you just hit choose. It'll load that deck to you. Once the deck's loaded to you, you can interact with any of the cards that are loaded in the deck. As you see when I'm using my mouse and hovering over all the cards that I'm hovering over actually appear in the preview box on the left. And if I wanted to modify this deck, I can click on a card, any card, and then all these buttons that modify the deck appear. So there are plus buttons, so if I wanted to add another Imperial Misdirection, I could hit +1, and it would make a third Imperial Misdirection. If I wanted to remove that one, there's a minus button. There's also a minus all. I could remove all Imperial Misdirection cards. If I wanted to save the deck, I could save it under a new name, or I could just save it under the same name. So right now it's Maul.deck. If I just hit save deck, that's just going to save the deck changes I made. Say I wanted to export this deck. I wanted to send this list to somebody in a text message. There's an export as text button, and all it does when you do click this button is it creates a duplicate file of all the cards in this deck as just a simple text file that you can export and send to friends. So if you go back to browse and look at all of our deck files, now there is a maul.deck, which is the file we use to play, and there's a maul.text, which then this file can be extracted and sent to somebody in a text message or post on Facebook or whatever. The other function, and this is kind of one of the more important ones, is how to load the deck that you have here to the game. So when I say to the game, to your match that you're playing. So if I hit load entire deck to you, it'll take my Maul deck and it will load the Maul deck to our game. When I look on my avatar on the left hand side, you can see these different zones below it. There's a hand and the deck zone. When I click on the deck zone, it'll actually populate that field here for the player. And so you can see there's 60 cards loaded for my 60 card deck. Now if I click on hand, it's going to show nothing because I haven't drawn any cards to add it to the hand. The hand is 0. And if I want to draw cards, there is a draw button with all these little quick buttons just below the table. So if I draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, oops, I drew one too many, that would be my hand. You can also now click on this tab here to go to your deck, hand, and you can flip back and forth. You could do the exact same functions with the tabs above your hand. So hand, deck, you can flip back and forth. And you can go through the different zones in the game. So we're going to have Patronus get on here, and she's going to load up a deck. And we are going to show you how to play the cards on the table, how to use all these functions in this field. Okay, so as you saw, as she was drawing cards, you could actually see her avatar on the other side of the table, and she drew a bunch of cards to her hand, and you can only see the back of her cards, which makes sense because I should see the cards that are in her hand. I'm actually going to take this card and return it to the top of my deck, so you can see how I do that. So if I right-click on a card in my hand, you can actually see all these functions that come up. I'm going to send to the topmost of deck. So now I have a 7-card hand again. Alright, if I want to interact with cards in my hand, it's pretty simple. All I do is I left click a card, and then I can drag it. So if I want to keep my blue units together, I can just drag them together. I can put all of my locations together, my ground units together. So I can kind of just rearrange my hand the way it makes it easier for me to use. To play cards on the table, simply just drag a card to the table. So I'm going to drag a character to the table. I'll drag a ground unit to the table and a space unit to the table. And I'll have, hopefully Patronus can do the same thing. She's got one of each. Okay. Perfect. So if we want to interact with these cards once they're on the table, it's the same, pretty much the same stuff. Lackey does work a lot like Excel and other programs where there's multiple ways to do the same exact thing. So for instance, if I want to tap this droid missile card, I can either double click it and that will automatically tap it. Double clicking it will also automatically untap it. Or I can left click it and there's a yellow highlight, and then from the quick buttons just below the game table, there's a tap function. You can tap it. You could also right click on the card like I showed you before, and there's a tap button there as well. Also an untap button. You can use any of these buttons here. This is usually when I play and I'm teaching someone new. It's usually these quick buttons because it's usually most of your functions. So you could add build points to a card. You could add damage to a card. You can remove damage. You can remove build. You can turn a card over. And it's important when you're trying to interact with a card and using the buttons, you do have to left click on the card so it's highlighted yellow to use the function. Because once you use the function, I think it deselects the card. You can also clear a card, and the way clear works is it basically resets the card to being face up on the table with nothing on it in the untapped position. So, for example, if this droid missile had 3 damage on it and it was tapped, I could hit clear to set it to a normal position. You can also move these cards on the table however you want. You can send these cards to different zones once they're on the table. So if I wanted to put it back in my hand, I could just simply drag it back to my hand. If I wanted to take this card and put it in my discard pile, I could either drag it over one of the discard tabs, so this one right here, which will then, if you select the discard tab, you'll see it. Or I could drag it over the discard tab by my avatar. That will work as well. Or the other option is to right click on the card and then send to top or bottom of either one of those discard pile, any one of those zones. Hand, deck, discard. So if I want to put it back in my hand, I could just hit hand. And Dreadmills will appear back in my hand. So really the functionality when you're playing with the cards on the table is honestly just knowing what buttons to click and what the buttons represent versus the real physical actions of the game. Um, the other thing to note on the table is the table itself has controls for how cards appear on the table. And at the top left corner, there's a, right now on my screen it's a minus, but sometimes it'll look like a plus and it'll be hiding all of those buttons. So if you don't see any of these buttons, hit the plus. It'll reveal all the buttons for the table controls. And what these do is, well, let's go through them. The mark button, select it, it'll turn blue. That allows you to draw a line from one unit to another unit, or from and honestly any card on the table to anything. So you can keep drawing these lines as long as that button remains blue. Anything you do on the table is just going to draw lines. If you want to stop that, you just have to turn that button off and it won't be blue. To erase the lines, hit the erase button. There's a zoom feature. When you left click the zoom and you left click and drag up, it'll zoom in on the table. Left click and drag down, it'll zoom away from the table. So you can set that to whatever you want. Again, you have to turn it off to stop it from doing that. There is a button to set any one of these to, so if I wanted to set my zoom back to 100%, I could just hit zoom and hit 100 to basically go to default. There's a scale. So the scale button allows you to make your cards bigger. Say that card's too small for you. You could left click and make all your cards bigger. Left click and go down to make them smaller. So it's just moving your mouse up and down while holding the left click. That is far too big, so we are going to set it to 100%. There's also a pan button. The pan lets you to left click, up and down. You can move the table wherever you want. Okay. And then there's a tilt. Some people don't like to play with a tilt. Some people like an extreme tilt. It really just depends. And all these buttons work the exact same way. You just hold down the left and you move up and down, or side to side, depending on the function. Okay. I actually don't like this tilt. Let's go back to the 30. I think 30 degrees is fine. And I really don't actually like this scale. So we're going to scale up to like 130. That's good. Okay. So we have this all set. We know how to use our cards and our buttons. Let's talk about the log. So the chat log, if you type in the chat log, I can type to Patronus. I can say hello.
Hello.
And she could see that. She could type back if she wanted. We could also look in this log for any time we make a change to the game. So for instance, if I want to tap my Best Spin Twin Pod car and I hit tap, you'll see it'll say Gold Leader performs tap on Best Spin Twin car card. This is really good. It'll help you keep track of anything you might have missed in a game. Say you forgot to draw a card, or you roll too many dice or less dice. This will show you. So let's show you what I mean. Roll a die. If I roll a die, it'll say Gold Leader rolls a 6-sided die and the result is 1. I could click this multiple times. Oops. I drew a bunch of cards. I can click this multiple times to roll multiple dice. Or I can actually just type backslash roll and any number, and I can roll that many dice at one time, and you can see the result for every one of those dice. On the left side of the screen, just below our avatars, you'll see all the different phases or turns of a game. So the first arrow, this allows you to go through different turns. So turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. This blue button is showing that this phase is being activated. So it's the ready phase, the untap, force, and roll for build phase. Then there is the draw and build phase for each side, dark and light. Then you have the retreat phase for dark and light. You have the battle phase, space, ground, character, and then end. And once you get to the end, to reset these, you could actually just hit the arrow and it'll start it right back at the top. So it kind of helps you go through the phases and learn the phases of the game if you're not really that familiar with them. Lastly, on this page, we had to discuss the resources. So in Star Wars TCG, you have build points and you have force points. Force points can be, there's a resource tracker for force points and build next to each avatar. All you do is left click on the box. It'll bring up a box where you can either minus force points, add force points, or set them to a certain number. So if I need 4, I could just hit +4, or I could hit =4. If I wanted to take force points away, I could hit -4. And then done just closes that box. And it's the same exact box for build points. Minus, plus, equals. There's also a button to set to 0. Done always closes the box. And that's pretty much it for the table. I don't think there's anything I'm missing here. Oh, I can show you one important thing. How to search your deck for a specific card. So, if you need to search your deck and you say, hey, I need to search for a location card. Well, you can click on the deck tab, and you can click on it here, or you can click on it in your name. It doesn't matter. It'll show you the backs of all the cards. Right click on the tab, and there's an option to reveal these cards. So I can reveal these cards to everyone at the table, which I wouldn't want to do for this scenario. Or I could reveal them just to the owner, which is me, or I could reveal them to others, and I can choose. So I'm going to choose reveal to owner because I'm the only one who wants to see the card I'm searching my deck for. And I'm going to hit all because I want to see all the cards. This will just turn all those cards over. I can select the location that I want. So, or I can scroll through, look at all the cards. So, I think though, if I were playing a game, most likely I'd be searching for a meditation chamber. I can select the card and usually just drag it to the table because when you're searching for a particular card in Star Wars TCG, it's always going to ask you to reveal that card that you searched to your opponent. So I usually just drag it on the table. But if you wanted to, you could right click on the card, hit send to top of hand. Then you could turn this reveal function off, which you should. So reveal to owner, and then I'm going to select none. And then I'm going to click here and hit shuffle. When I go to my hand, you'll see that I have the meditation chamber there. And at this point, I could either drag it to the table, show it to my opponent, that's the card I took, or I could do the same thing, or I could right click and reveal, or can I not? Actually, I can't reveal a card in my hand, so yes, the easiest thing to do is just place it on the table so they can see it and then put it back in your hand. Alright, and then the last thing we need to show you is actually how to build the deck. So if we go back to the deck editor, we have this deck loaded in here already. This is the deck we're playing with. If you want to start a brand new deck, at the top there's a new deck. It'll clear what's in here, And in order to add cards to it, you have to go to the card pool. So you can see this blue highlighted tab shows me there's over 6,000 cards in here. This is every card from the IDC and every card from Wizards of the Coast. The easiest way to find a card, you can start if you know the name of the card, the exact name, you can type it in the quick search. So I can type in Sandhill and it'll find both versions of Sandhill, A and B, unless I'm really specific and I put in that parentheses A parentheses to find only Sandhill A. When you click on the card while it's in the quick search and you click on the cards here, it will highlight the buttons at the bottom to allow me to add these to my deck. So if I want to add 2 copies of Sandhill, I would hit 1 twice. If I wanted 4 copies, I'd hit 4. If I wanted to remove all the copies, I could remove them. But I think with this deck, I would probably just want 2 copies. Maybe 1, who knows. I could hit clear. This will restore all the cards. There's also the option to add filters. So say you don't know what specific card you want and you want to see your options. You can come to the left and you can do filter by set. So let's say I want to see all the Attack of the Clones cards. I just click on this box, set. There's a drop down box here. I'm probably going to choose contains because I want to see only Attack of the Clone cards. And here in the text box, you want to search for the abbreviated set name. So if you look at the second column here, you'll see these are the abbreviated set names. So Attack of the Clones would be AOTC. As soon as I type it in, you'll see this all changed, and you can only see Attack of the Clones cards. Now, if I wanted to see every set except for Attack of the Clones, I can change this drop down to doesn't contain. And now you'll see every set except for Attack of the Clones. I'm going to change it back to contains. So say I have Attack of the Clones filtered, and I want to see all the characters in Attack of the Clones, but I only want to see Dark Side. So we could do a side contains, and this time I don't want to choose side contains because I want to see all the Dark Side cards, but I also want to see all the neutral cards. So I'm going to choose doesn't contain, and I'm going to put L for light side. So I'm going to filter out all the light side cards and only see dark side and neutral cards. Then I'm going to have to add another filter for characters. So type contains, and I just type character, or I could even type CHAR, that'll do it as well. And now I have a list of all the dark side characters from Attack of the Clones in this field. I could even go more specific. I could add another filter, and I could just do Jedi, and I can see all of the dark side Jedi cards. And then if I wanted, I could click this button to turn off all those filters and reset. Once I have a deck with all the cards that I want, I can name my deck. So I'm just going to name this test. I can hit save deck. It'll save that deck. I can go to browse, and I can look for that deck that's saved in alphabetical order, test.deck. I could choose it and I could add it here, and then I could always load the entire deck to me so I can play with it. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend playing with a 2-card deck, but I didn't feel like building a 60-card deck on the video was worth your time. The last thing we'll show you is kind of a very helpful. We're going to show you how to load a deck in Lackey from how do you want to say from the SWTCG.com website. And we'll probably just make that a separate video that'll be really short and just show you how to download a Lackey deck file and then import the file into the program. If you guys liked this video, I really appreciate the support. If you can like, follow, and subscribe to us on Twitch and YouTube. This is Gold Leader. This is Patronus, and we're out. Thank you.